What is Agni and the different forms of Agni, and of course, what are the symptoms that we have low or high Agni. Hi, this is Cosmic Mike, and welcome to my show. We're going to be covering the last episode, which is basically how do I manage that Agni? How do I keep it, high enough or consistent enough as I'm aging or as you're aging. I'm nearly 50. I'll be 50 next year, and I want to make sure that my Agni or my digestive fire is kicking in or is always being there throughout my years, because that's what's going to keep my vigor, my stamina, my energy, my skin, my glow, everything, my focus, attention, because everything that we eat, which is the food, is the fuel, and whatever we eat needs to be digested to the point where the body absorbs and digests and absorbs and assimilates and eliminates it properly, efficiently. And the only thing to start all those reactions are the breakdown of that food, and which is the Agni, which is taking on top of that, which is basically acting upon that food. So food, how to maintain your Agni. Food, your basic fuel for that Agni. We want to make sure the food is warm or hot. Make sure we're eating small, not too much quantity, because quantity makes a huge difference. If you could just reduce your quantity that you're having in each meal 25%, you will see a huge difference, not only your weight loss, your energy, your constipation if you're having, your elimination, even your skin, because now the nutrients are able to be efficiently broken down and used up by the organs or the tissues. So food, definitely a most important thing that we can adjust. Quantity, quality, timing. Timing is very important. We need to make sure we are not just snacking in between. We need to have our breakfast, lunch, dinner, because in between, as science has really discovered, the metabolic syndrome, where every time you have a piece of cracker or a chocolate or even an apple in between, you're spiking your blood sugar. And as you're spiking your blood sugar, you're basically shooting insulin. And if insulin is in the blood, then most likely there'll be fat deposit, or there'll be deposit of fat in the tissues or the organs. So definitely making sure we're just having that breakfast, the lunch, and the dinner, and not really snacking too much in between, or trying not to snack in between. And we all fall into this where we kind of pick up things here and nibble there, and I'm being very, mindful. So that's what we call mindful eating, where we just want to be very careful. We should eat enough, and that way we don't feel hungry. And I'll share some other, ideas and some tactics that you can use so you do not feel, hungry in that sense. And also making sure the temperature of the food is mildly warm or hot, because cold just takes a little bit longer for the food, for the body to digest. It means the Agni has to work harder. So if you're having cold meat, cold raw vegetables, as a matter of fact, and cold food all the time, or leftover foods all the time, then it will take the body to digest those foods much longer, and more energy is required as such. And if this continues over a period of time, remember, this is not happening overnight, this is for months and years that's happening, then it could turn into a chronic metabolic issue, digestive issue, which could turn into a lot of other ailments, constipation, IBS, diverticulitis, weight gain, of course, diabetes. So there's a whole heap of gamut of stuff that's been turned over by just simply watching what we are eating, the quality, the quantity, making sure it's warm, and the timing. Because even the timing, we know that as the seasons change, but the day also changes. The pitta is very high in the day when the sun is very hot, between 11 till 4, and that's where your energy is high. That's where the digestive fire is at a peak. So eating most of your food at that point, or eating a larger quantity at that lunchtime, would be the right thing to do, instead of having too much in the end of the day where you're slumming to the sleep, and you're going to sleep where everything shuts down and the body is not able to digest. Guess what's going to happen is going to deposit fat, or deposit that food, or leave some of that undigested food, so it's stuck there. And if this happens overnight or every night, then you're going to end up with constipation. And most of us experience this. I've experienced this. And it really helps to eat lightly at night. That should be your lightest meal. The main meal, which should be the lunch, and that's where you should be having your meat, your little carbs, because your digestive fire is strong. Plus you're moving about, you're at work or you're at home, you're doing things, you're not just laying around. So that is, timing is very important. Also, it makes a huge difference when you set a time where 9 o'clock I'm having my breakfast, 1:30 I'm having my lunch, 7 or 6:30 I'm having my dinner. Your mind tells the body or the stomach, hey, it's time to eat, I'm hungry, let's produce some juice, let's produce the bile, let's produce the stomach acid. So it's waiting, so it starts producing because it becomes a habit, just like anything else. So if you sporadically eat and you're eating at different times, it doesn't know when to start those juices. So if you just give it some food at that point where in the middle of the day at 4 o'clock you're trying to eat something heavy, it will just not have enough resources to break that food down, and it's going to sit there until it starts producing, where a lot of it could get fermented or a lot of it just could not be digested and gets sitting there, causes bloating, gas, and other issues. So timing, a very important thing. We talked about water. Everybody has this issue with water. How much water should I be drinking with the meals or without the meals? Definitely you don't want to have too much water with your meals. You want to have a very small amount during or just before, I would say 30 minutes before having your meal. That way you feel full, you don't burn out all the juices that you're going to produce while you're sitting at the meal, and not having cold water where it suppresses, or remember, it will down that fire, that campfire. If you're having and getting ready to digest that food and you pour hot cold water on it, it's going to dampen that whole fire. So having a warm cup of water, especially with ginger or with some black pepper during your meal or right after your meal, it's a very effective way to bring that digestive juices, to bring that Agni into a higher flame, which is deepana. Deepana is kind of deepening and highlighting that fire. And in India we use deep, basically means diya, where we use ghee or we use oil to make sure that flame is burning for hours. And exactly the same thing in your body. We use ghee or fat as such, especially ghee, with your meal to enhance their digestive juices. So having a tablespoon of ghee just before your meal, if you're having a tough time losing weight, if you're having a lot of gas and bloating, and as you age these things will happen. So having ghee just before your meals stimulates that Agni, or really make sure that fire is strong enough to receive the meat, if you're eating meat, or the fish, or even the raw vegetables or the salads that you're trying to eat. So making sure ghee, very important. I think with ghee with honey, also very important to include with your meals. These stimulate the digestive juices. We have enzymes. There is a product, I thought I brought it, but it's called Trikatu. Trikatu is basically a blend of 3 herbs, 3 spices, black pepper and ginger and long pepper. Really effective in getting that fire within. Now, somebody who's already at a point where their pitta is very high, they may need to do that with ghee and honey to pacify too much of the heat. But somebody who's trying to lose weight, somebody who has a lot of digestive issues, and I think blood type A's and blood type B's generally have those kind of issues, bloating and gas, where they can use the Trikatu, mix it with some water and drink it with your meals or right after with your meals, especially warm or hot water. Now, I have tried a shortcut, or I tried a different thing where I use ginger, fennel, cumin, coriander. These are 4 spices that are available in every grocery store and every home, and you could use those in a blend for having, especially with after your dinner, and having that cup of tea, maybe 4 ounces or 2 ounces with warm or hot water right after your meals. This helps digestify, prevents the flatulence, prevents the gas and the bloating. And warm water, just like warm food, is very important. No ice. You want to get away, especially when we're going into the season where it's colder and it's going to get colder, where it's snowing. You want to make sure you're having warm soups, warm things, and of course, warm liquids, because warmness opens up. Like in the summer, the flower and the plants blossom. In the winter, they shed and they fall because it constricts. Just like that, your digestive juices, your bowel channels, your colon, they constrict in the cold weather. That's why we want to keep them warm by having warm clothes, a warm environment, but warm food and warm drinks that we could have. So I think that definitely covers a lot of things we could do to help manage that Agni, to bring it up. And also I have some other shortcuts. Right after food or dinner, if you can, lie on your left side if you're going to watch TV or going to do something for 10 or 15 minutes, because that makes sure the stomach opens up and it has enough room to digest that food. If you're on the other side, if on the right side, the liver flaps over to the stomach and squeezes it, and thus, it creates a very tiny space for that already tiny stomach to digest that whole food that you're eating or you just ate. So important to make sure you're on the left side. You'll see a huge difference. I use fennel. Like I said, that's why it's served in the restaurants a lot. The other thing I've seen, buttermilk, which is lassi. So, having lassi in the summer months or in the hot tropical areas, really churning that yogurt and putting some salt, especially rock salt or sea salt, and just having, a little bit, 2 ounce, 4 ounce, or, of just lassi or buttermilk that's called, right after your meals really helps pacify and digest, especially for breakfast and lunch, not as so much for dinner. So, these are some of the things that you can definitely do to enhance that Agni. And in the yoga realm, of course, Kapalbhati is one of the best ones that I've seen to really stimulate the digestive juices because of the heavy breathing. Anything Kriya Yoga, anything that does a lot of the heavy breathing, the heavy pranayams, that also stimulates. Remember, the wind is going to soak, the wind is going to bring that fire up a little bit. So doing those on a regular basis also stimulates the digestive. We have enzymes, like I mentioned. You could use ginger. I think ginger is one of the best things that's very possible, and black pepper everybody should be having, especially the ones who are overweight, trying to lose weight, aging, and if you are feeling down, lazy, bored, and this is the time where you want to have, or if you ate too much, to have ginger, black pepper, and long pepper together, which is the trikatu, as a matter of fact. So, having those warm waters and those spices are very beneficial to keep that Agni going. So I hope that was helpful, and wish you all the best of Agni moving forth, and happy weekend. Be safe. This is Cosmic Mike. We'll catch up on Cosmic Monday. Thank you so much.